In every home, behind every closed door, there's a story waiting to be uncovered. Welcome to Dark Whispers, where we dive deep into the hidden truths of domestic crime and the relationships that turn deadly. If you're drawn to real stories, powerful insights, and the shadows most people avoid, you're in the right place. Subscribe now and step into the whispers they never wanted you to hear.
And Miss Ellis would like to speak.
I just want to say I apologize. I'm sorry for being happy.
What makes a stranger walk into a store, steal 2 knives, and then hunt down a 3-year-old child in a parking lot? No connection, no argument, no reason. Bionca Ellis didn't know this family. They didn't know her. But on May 3rd, 2024, she decided their lives didn't matter. The question everyone kept asking was she evil or was she just insane? May 3rd, 2024. Giant Eagle grocery store in North Olmsted, Ohio. Regular Friday afternoon. Margot Wood was grocery shopping with her 3-year-old son, Julian. Get in, get what you need, go home. That was the plan. Julian was 3 years old, still learning the world, still trusting that the adults around him would keep him safe. And Margot was doing exactly that, keeping her baby safe. Or at least, she thought she was. Bionca Ellis, 32 years old. She walked into that same Giant Eagle, but she wasn't there for groceries. She stole 2 knives from inside that store, and then she walked right back outside. This wasn't some random breakdown. Ellis took those knives with purpose and went straight to the parking lot. The same parking lot where Margot Wood was walking with her son. No connection between them. None. Ellis didn't know Margot, didn't know Julian, had never seen these people before. But she saw a mother and a child, and something in her mind said, them. You just finished grocery shopping. You're walking through the parking lot with your 3-year-old. You're not scared. You're not looking over your shoulder. Because why would you? You're in a grocery store parking lot in the middle of the day. You're safe. Except Margot Wood wasn't safe. Bionca Ellis watched them. She followed them. 2 knives in her possession, trailing behind a mother and her baby. Margot didn't see her coming. You don't expect a stranger to approach you with violent intent in broad daylight. But Ellis did. She closed the distance, and then she struck. The attack was fast, vicious, senseless. Ellis didn't say a word. She just started stabbing, and her target? 3-year-old Julian Wood, a child who couldn't defend himself. Margot Wood did what any mother would do. She fought back. She threw herself between Ellis and her son. She tried to save Julian, but Ellis had 2 knives, and she wasn't stopping. Margot got stabbed trying to protect her baby. Blood everywhere. Screaming. Chaos. And through it all, Ellis just kept going. Kept attacking this child like he had done something to her. But he didn't. He was 3 years old. When it was over, she walked away. Just walked away. Didn't run. Didn't panic. She walked away like she had just finished a regular errand. Margot was left there, bleeding, trying to save her son's life. Emergency services rushed to the scene, but the damage was done. Julian Wood had been stabbed multiple times by a complete stranger. Despite everything the paramedics tried, Julian didn't make it. He died from his injuries. A 3-year-old child, murdered in a grocery store parking lot for absolutely no reason. Investigators showed up to a scene that made no sense. A targeted attack on a toddler by someone with no connection to the family? That's the kind of case that shakes even the most experienced detectives. Surveillance footage from the Giant Eagle showed everything. Ellis stealing the knives, walking to the parking lot, approaching the Wood family, attacking Julian, and then walking away like nothing happened. But here's where it gets even more disturbing.
And Miss Ellis would like to speak.
start being happy.
Okay. All right, you can be seated. Thank you.
There it was, an apology from Bionca Ellis, albeit a very short and concise apology. Don't know how meaningful it will be to the Wood family, but nonetheless an apology at her sentencing. Welcome back to Court TV Live. This morning is all about justice for 3-year-old Julian Wood and his mother Margot Wood, as they were both stabbed at a popular grocery store parking lot in broad daylight. It's time now for convicted killer Bionca Ellis to learn her fate.
Investigators dug into Bionca Ellis's background and found she had a history: mental health issues, specifically schizophrenia. She'd been in and out of the system, in and out of jail, in and out of mental health evaluations. And get this, just days before she killed Julian Wood, Bionca Ellis had been released from jail on another case. There had been a recommendation for yet another mental health exam. But that exam never happened. She was released anyway. And then she walked into a giant eagle, stole 2 knives, and took a child's life. So now the question wasn't just, who did this? The question was, how did this happen? How did someone with a documented history of mental illness and criminal behavior end up free to commit murder? The community was outraged, heartbroken. Parents were thinking, that could have been us. Because it could have been. There was nothing special about that day. Nothing that made the Wood family a target except for the fact that they were there. Investigators built their case. The evidence was overwhelming. Surveillance footage, witness testimony, forensics. Everything pointed to Bionca Ellis. But the defense had a strategy: insanity. The prosecution had to prove that mental illness wasn't a free pass to murder a child. Here's the thing about the insanity defense. It's not just about having a mental illness. It's about whether you understood what you were doing was wrong at the time you did it. And the prosecution believed Ellis knew exactly what she was doing. Think about it. She walked into a store. She stole knives. Not 1, but 2. She concealed them. She walked out. She didn't attack the first person she saw. She walked to the parking lot. She selected a target. She approached them. She attacked with purpose. And then she walked away. That's not the behavior of someone who's completely detached from reality. That's calculated. That's intentional. They brought in mental health experts. Yes, she had schizophrenia. Yes, she had been hospitalized before. But none of that meant she didn't understand that stabbing a 3-year-old child to death was wrong. And that distinction? That was everything. The community wasn't just watching this case. They were living it. Parents were terrified. How do you trust that the system is protecting you when someone like Bionca Ellis was walking free just days before she committed murder? Rocky River had released her, even though there were red flags everywhere. Even though professionals had recommended another mental health evaluation. And now, a child was dead.
And therefore, I urgently implore our city and county leaders to continue providing facilities and programs that respond quickly and compassionately to those in crisis. The need is dire now than far too many of us realize. The leaders in this county have been discussing this topic for far too long. Please get it done. No family should have to lose a child, and no family should have to watch their loved ones deteriorate because meaningful and effective mental health services were unavailable. The absence of adequate and functioning mental health facilities in our community has tragic consequences. And I call upon our leaders at every level of government to make providing and supporting mental health care a true priority so that others in crisis can be helped before another tragedy occurs. But Ms. Ellis, again, I want to state that while your mental illness was accepted by this jury, it is not an excuse for what you did. The jury found that although you suffer from schizophrenia, you understood the nature and wrongfulness of your actions and handed down their guilty verdict on all charges. When reviewing the sentencing factors as outlined under 29-29-11 and 29-29-12, my job as a judge here is to punish the offender, but also to make sure that the sentence should be proportionate and not demeaning to the seriousness of the offender's conduct and the impact on the victims, and consistent with other sentences with similar crimes. In looking at the seriousness, of course, the child's age and the suffering weigh heavily for this court as well. And so with respect to my sentencing, after taking in consideration all the matters before the court that are appropriate under the principles and purposes of sentencing, the court's going to impose the following sentence. Starting with count 2, as found guilty on count 2 of murder, it's a life with parole eligibility at 15 years. On count 3, the murder charge under the B section, it's life with parole eligibility at 15 years. And those are the maximum sentences that can be handed down on those 2 counts. On count 4, with respect to the Reagan-Toke sentencing guidelines, count 4 and count 8 are both felonies of the second-degree felonious assault. We also speak to count 5, which was the endangering children as a felony of the second degree. And then we speak to count 7 and 6. The state and I have agreed that I will move forward with count 7. Under count 7, under the Reagan-Toke sentencing guidelines on the attempted murder in count 7, the court's going to hand down the maximum sentence of 11 years as the minimum sentence to the indefinite sentence of 16 and a half years. Again, I've outlined the Reagan-Toke guidelines and the reporting requirements for post-release control that will be controlling on all other felonies of the second and first degree, this being the highest level. I've outlined the 5 provisions, as I noted for the record already. And then with respect to the count 4 and 8, the maximum sentence is 8 years. I'll hand down that sentence. Count 5, 8 years. Count 6, 11 years. Count 8, 8 years. And then as indicted, count 10, which would be a 6-month sentence on the misdemeanor charge. Regarding aggravated murder and finding the defendant guilty of aggravated murder by this jury, the court's going to hand down a sentence of life without parole. I'll run every other sentence concurrent to life without parole. Ms. Ellis, you'll be given credit to 509 days of the time that you've served. I'll order you in the custody of the sheriff to transport you to Marysville Correctional Facility. I'll also indicate that fines, fees, and court costs will be waived with respect to this sentence. In addition to the verdict that has been handed down by this jury and the sentence that the court handed down, Ms. Ellis, you have a right to appeal both the sentence and the conviction in this case. You can do that by filing a notice of appeal with the clerk of courts within 30 days of this sentence. If you're unable to pay for the cost of an appeal, you have the right to appeal without payment of costs. If you're unable to obtain counsel for an appeal, I'll appoint counsel to represent you. If you're unable to pay the cost of documents necessary, they are provided to you without cost. You have a right to a notice of appeal filed timely on your behalf. And Ms. Ellis or counsel, do you wish to appeal both the sentence and the conviction handed down in this case?
Yes, Your Honor. No objection for the record and appoint counsel for the appeal.
I'll note your objection regarding my sentence, and knowing that she's unable to afford counsel, I'm going to appoint the public defender to represent her with respect to her appeal. Again, noting for the record, all counts will be run concurrent to each other, with the life without parole being count 1 sentence. I'll waive all fines, fees, and court costs, give her credit for the 509 days that she served, in addition to time while she awaits her transportation to Marysville Correctional Facility for Women. Is there anything further from the state of Ohio before we recess?
No, Your Honor.
Anything on behalf of Ms. Ellis?
No, Your Honor.
All right, we adjourn. Thank you.
meaning Bionca Ellis would spend every single day for the rest of her life in prison. She would never walk free again. She would die behind bars. She was given credit for the 509 days she'd already served while awaiting trial. And then she was ordered to be transported to Marysville Correctional Facility for Women, where she would spend the rest of her life. The Wood family finally had their answer. Bionca Ellis would never hurt anyone else. Margot Wood spoke to the press after sentencing. She thanked the prosecution. She thanked the community. And she said something powerful. She was grateful that justice had been served, but no verdict, no sentence, no amount of prison time would ever bring Julian back. But here's the part that makes this case even more tragic. This didn't have to happen. The judge said it himself during sentencing. He took a moment to address something bigger. He talked about the mental health crisis in this country. He talked about how the system is broken. He talked about how leaders need to stop having meetings and actually do something. Bionca Ellis was failed by the system long before she walked into that giant eagle. She had schizophrenia. She had a documented history of mental illness. She had been in and out of jails and facilities her whole adult life. And every single time, the system had a choice. Get her real help, or just process her through. And every single time, they chose the latter. Days before she murdered Julian Wood, Ellis was in jail on another case. Professionals recommended another mental health evaluation, but that evaluation never happened. She was released. And then a 3-year-old paid the price for that failure with his life. The judge said that no family should have to lose a child because meaningful and effective mental health services were unavailable. He called on leaders at every level of government to make mental health care a true priority so that others in crisis could be helped before another tragedy occurs. But let's be real. How many times have we heard that? How many times have politicians stood up after a tragedy and said, "We need to do better"? And how many times has anything actually changed? The absence of adequate mental health facilities in our communities has tragic consequences. We saw that with Julian Wood, and we'll keep seeing it until somebody actually does something about it. But here's the other side. Mental illness does not absolve you of responsibility. Yes, Bionca Ellis was mentally ill. Yes, she needed help. But she also understood that what she was doing was wrong. The evidence proved that, and she was held accountable. Mental illness can explain behavior, but it does not erase accountability for taking someone's life, especially not the life of a 3-year-old child. Julian Wood will never get to grow up. He'll never go to kindergarten, never learn to ride a bike, never go to prom, never graduate, never fall in love. All of that was stolen from him by a woman he'd never met. And Margot Wood, she has to live with the memory of fighting to save her son and not being able to. She has to live with the trauma of being stabbed while trying to protect her baby. She has to live in a world where her 3-year-old son is gone, and no amount of justice will ever bring him back. The community of North Olmsted was shaken. Parents looked at their own children differently. Because if it could happen to Julian Wood, it could happen to anyone. But the community showed up. They showed up for the Wood family. They attended the trial. They sent love and support. They made sure Julian's name wasn't forgotten. Prosecutor Michael O'Malley said his thoughts and prayers remained with the Wood family, and that he couldn't imagine the anguish they must feel. And that's the truth. Unless you've lost a child, you can't truly understand that level of pain. The Wood family thanked everyone who supported them, and they asked that people remember Julian not just as a victim, but as a little boy who was loved, who mattered, who had a future that was stolen from him. So what do we take away from this? The mental health system in this country is broken, and it's getting people killed. Something has to change. Mental illness is not a free pass. It's not an excuse to harm people, and walk away without consequences. People with mental illness deserve compassion and treatment, but they also need to be held accountable when they commit crimes, especially crimes against children. And we have to protect our kids. We have to stay alert. We have to trust our instincts, because danger can come from anywhere, at any time. Julian Wood deserved better. He deserved to grow up. He deserved to live. And the fact that he didn't get that chance because a broken system failed to keep a dangerous person off the streets, that's on all of us. Bionca Ellis will spend the rest of her life in prison. That's justice. But it's not closure. Because closure would mean Julian is still here. So we remember Julian Wood. We say his name. We honor his memory. And we demand that the systems designed to protect us actually do their job, so that no other family has to go through what the Woods went through. Rest in peace, Julian. You deserved so much more than this world gave you.